Feather the Redeemed versus Bladewing the Risen. Don't think I've ever seen this used as a commander before, so it should be interesting to see that. We'll keep this, and we can go for a tap land on the first turn, and then probably get down the Marble Diamond, get a bit of ramp out of the way in the early game. And then we'll see where we end up from there. Maybe a Stoneforge Mystic into Feast and Famine, so that we can protect Feather. Oh, and we get into Cloud Shift as well, that's really good. That means that I'd quite like to go for Marble Diamond on turn 2. And then when we get Feather in play, we'll have 4 mana so that we can hold up the Cloud Shift in order to protect Feather if we want to. Feather the Redeemed is a 3 mana flying 3/4. Whenever we cast an instant or sorcery that targets a creature we control, we get it back to our hand at the beginning of the next end step. And Bladewing the Arisen is 7 mana in Rakdos for a 4/4 flying dragon. When it enters, our opponent can return a dragon from the graveyard to the battlefield, and it can give dragons +1/+1 for Rakdos. Let's get down the Rugged Prairie. And then our Marble Diamond, we can give Feather hexproof as well, so that's good. And the aim of this deck is to take advantage of casting lots of cheap instants and sorceries. Gutter Snipe is a good example of that. For every instant or sorcery spell that we cast, it deals 2 damage to an opponent. So if we can get a long game going and we have lots of Cloud Shift type effects in the deck, then we can start getting a good storm count going. I think we just want to go double white into that, and then red we can get Feather down and hope that our opponent doesn't have 2 removal spells. Okay, well there's one. Yeah, the problem with Cloud Shift is that it's to protect us from spot removal, and it will just flicker Feather, and then Feather will come back in and we'll just have to sack it anyway, so I think we're just going for Gilded Lotus next turn. Gilded Lotus into Gutter Snipe, or maybe Champion's Helm, I'm not sure yet. Champion's Helm should be good actually. And luckily we haven't seen much in the ways of graveyard shenanigans from our opponent yet, so that is good for us. Let's go for a plateau here, and then we'll get down the Gilded Lotus and the Champion's Helm, I think. I don't want to get down too much mana because I don't want my opponent to scoop. Champion's Helm is +2/+2 and hexproof to a legendary creature. The equip cost is only 1 for that, and Feather is going to cost 5 to get back out again. Okay, but they've blown up our Gilded Lotus with a Demolish. But luckily we have Swords to Plowshares, so that's not too bad. Feather is 5, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we can Champion's Helm as well. I think that's okay. We get a nice buff on Feather. And another little sub-theme of the deck is Voltron. We have Stoneforge Mystic and a few equipments in the deck, one of which is the Champion's Helm, obviously. Then we have things like Jitte and Sword of Feast and Famine, Sunforger, Skull Clamp. There's an additional cost to cast it. You can reveal a pirate. A pirate? Okay, did not expect to see pirates in this deck. It's a dragon commander that we are playing against, so that is very strange. But that's just a 2/2 for 1 mana. And they reveal the 2/2 haster for 4 mana. When it enters, it explores. And then there's a morph creature. Okay, I think it's a good idea to get down the Stoneforge Mystic and play and equip the Feast and Famine. Yeah, let's get down the plains. That'll be 2 for the Stoneforge Mystic. And then we'll get down the Sword of Feast and Famine. I want to tap down the lands first because they are going to untap with the sword. And we're at a point now where if we hit our opponent 3 times, then we are going to deal commander damage to them. They're going to have to discard a card here. We might help them by having them discard a dragon. And then a nice little interaction we can do is first go for Gutter Snipe, I think is okay. And then we can Cloud Shift the Stoneforge Mystic. And that will get us another ETB trigger, and it will also trigger the Gutter Snipe for 2 damage. Plus we'll get the Cloud Shift back at the end of our turn. So Stoneforge Mystic is flickered and comes back in. We will say yes to that and grab ourselves, what do we want? I think a Skull Clamp is okay because apparently we're not going to draw into anything. I'll get the Skull Clamp out, but we do want to hold up mana for either the Swords to Plowshares or the Cloud Shift. Don't think we'll need Cloud Shift because we do have Hexproof on our commander. Okay, 2 damage to a target creature. If it would die this turn, exile it instead. We are going to Cloud Shift that in order to protect it from the spot removal. And Gutter Snipe has already dealt 4 damage to our opponent. Okay, a True Faith Censor. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and Vigilance. As long as the equipped creature is human, it gets an additional +1/+0. The equip cost is 2. This seems to be quite a casual deck, so we will play another game after this. But this might show you all the aim of the deck. Let's go for Defiant Strike on Feather. Gutter Snipe will deal 2 damage. And we'll draw a card with the Defiant Strike as well, so we can cast that again during our opponent's turn. Bandage is the same. That will also draw us a card, so we'll cast that as well. And that's just a card draw spell at this point, but it prevents 1 damage. And actually, that draw wins us the game. So let's go for Temur Battle Rage onto the Feather. That is double strike. And that means that we're getting through 4 commander damage here. And there we go. That's exactly the type of stuff that we want to do with Feather. I don't know how much damage Gutter Snipe dealt there, but it was certainly more than enough to warrant its inclusion in the deck. Only 3 mana. Yeah, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to be rewarded for casting lots of cheap instants and sorcery spells, and I think that was a good example of it there. We'll get on with another game. Okay, let's see if we can get a more fair game going this time. Not likely. Against Oloro, Ageless Ascetic. We have a couple of means of scrying there. We'll just keep it. If we're desperate, we can go for Samut Sprint in order to get a scry going. Get down our mana confluence first of all, and then throw the turn over. Oloro Ageless Ascetic is an Esper 6 mana commander, a 4/5. At the beginning of your upkeep, you gain 2 life, whether it's in the command zone or in play. And then, as long as Oloro is on the field, whenever you gain life, you can pay 1 to have each opponent lose 1 life and you draw a card. And Oloro getting down a Temple of Silence, that's a scry land. Okay, and another land is actually pretty good. We'll just get that down tapped and hope that our opponent wants to play things out slowly as well. No blue mana so far, which I'm happy about. And they're just tapping out and passing the turn, so that's good. Not going to get down Feather on turn 3. I'm just going to hope for another land actually, so let's go for the sword. Zada is in here for some redundancy. It's a good commander itself, actually. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery that targets only Zarda, then you copy it for each other creature you control, and each copy of that spell targets one of your creatures. We have a means of getting lots of tokens into play, so it's a good way of casting lots of copies of instants and sorceries. Our opponent isn't doing anything, but I imagine that they have. I imagine they have means of getting rid of our feather, and it's really out of reach once it becomes 5 mana because we're not drawing into any more lands. I'm just going to Samut's Sprint at the end of our opponent's turn, I think. That will allow us to scry, and I'm hoping that we can put a land on top, or at least a useless card on the bottom. Our opponent isn't missing land drops, but they haven't gotten into blue, which I'm happy about. And down comes a Cradle of Vitality. That is something I'd expect to see in a more casual build of Oloro, so it might be that we're up against a casual player again. Oh, and we don't have anything to target with these creatures, so we actually can't do that. Ugh, that feels bad. We're just gonna hope. Yeah, that's not great either, but it's at least something to cast. We'll get down the Young Pyromancer. And now we can definitely go for Samut's Sprint onto that. They can pay 2 mana to put a plus counter onto our Pyromancer if they want to. Doubt they will. And more Orzhov mana for our opponent. Oh, Hamlet's Archive is really good in Oloro. Okay, it's time for us to go for Samut's Sprint and try and fix our mana. Young Pyromancer's another example of us being rewarded for casting instants and sorceries. Firebrand Archer is yet another example of it, but we really want a land. So we're going to scry that to the bottom. Okay, that's great. That is a land, so we can hold up God's Willing. We'll get down Feather. And if we need to protect our commander from a piece of spot removal, then we can give it protection from a colour. So let's just swing in with our creatures here. Might be that our opponent has lots of board wipes in the deck because maybe they're super friends. There's different versions of Oloro, and obviously I'm not sure which version this is. Would be really good to equip Feather with the Sword of Feast and Famine next turn, and then we might be able to pull shenanigans with Psychotic Fury. This gives double strike and draws a card. So if we can equip Feather and give double strike, then we'll get a couple of sword triggers as well, getting them to discard 2 cards. And we'll untap all of our lands twice. Yeah, that might be an idea. Does leave us open though. I just want to give my opponent a chance to remove auto yields here because I think they might have F6 by accident. Yeah, it looks like they have. If they have, I'll just wait for them to confirm it, but if they have, I'll just pass the turn straight back over to them. Alright, in that case, we just both get a free draw, so let's just pass it straight back over. Okay, so just going to pass straight back over to my opponent. They do gain a bit more life, but this might be a newer Commander player or Magic Online player, and the interface is a little bit weird sometimes, so unless you've got your hotkeys memorized, it can be a bit difficult to navigate your way around sometimes. I will take advantage of untapping though. We can probably go for Accelerate in order to draw a card. We'll do that during our opponent's second main phase, and then at our opponent's end step we will get the Accelerate back into our hand. Okay, they're going for the Anguished Unmaking, which is exactly why we're holding up the God's Willing. We'll give our creature protection from white, I think, because our opponent just has white mana held up. We get a Young Pyromancer trigger, and we get back the God's Willing at the beginning of the end step. And then we get a Scry there. I don't think I really care about that while we have a God's Willing, so we'll put that on the bottom. And then giving our commander protection from white makes the Anguished Unmaking fizzle. And now that it has protection from white, I think I feel okay about going for Accelerate. We'll put that onto Feather as well. That gets us more tokens and a card draw, and we'll get 2 cards back at the beginning of the end step. Oh, we get a Sol Ring, that is pretty good. And then 2 triggers go on the stack because this triggers at the beginning of the end step. We get back the Accelerate and the God's Willing, and we get into another land. So let's go for Plains and Sol Ring, and we're catching up to our opponent on mana now. In fact, I think we've overtaken our opponent. We'll go for Sword of Feast and Famine, and then I think Psychotic Fury. Don't mind doing it during the main phase because we can give our creature protection from white at instant speed anyway. So this is going to be 10 commander damage onto our opponent. We draw a card with Psychotic Fury as well. And we're going to untap all of our lands. In fact, let's just swing in with everything. We're going to untap all our lands so we can get down the Cold Steel Heart. And our opponent will have to discard a card here. Oh, and I forgot it was double strike, so actually let me just get down Accelerate so that we can draw another card. And then when the second Sword of Feast and Famine resolves, we'll untap our lands again. Might as well make use of that card if we're going to untap anyway. Oh, and I passed through the... No, I was too busy talking there. I should have gotten down the Cold Steel Heart there. And maybe even go for Open the Armory as well, but I'm not too worried about losing out too much on this game. Let's just ditch the Cold Steel Heart in that case. It's going to be too slow now that I've missed my opportunity. Noteworthy that our opponent's still at 34 life, even though we've hit them for quite a bit of damage there. I think just for the fun of it, I'll go for Zada next turn, and then we can target Zada with the... Oh no, we can't go for Zada with Psychotic Fury because this only targets multicoloured creatures. Yeah, what I was thinking there was giving Zada double strike, and that in turn would have given everything on the board double strike. And Kambal coming down for our opponent, that will start to drain us of life. We can get down both Accelerate and Psychotic Fury here. Oh no, we've gone through to the end step, I didn't realise. Really need to be careful with when we cast things with this deck. Yeah, so that does dictate what we're doing here. I think we might be able to win next turn actually. If we go for Open the Armory and Skull Clamp. Yeah, if we get down the Skull Clamp we can give our Feather a buff. Yeah, let's get down a Mountain. We'll go for that. I think we can win this turn here. Let's Open the Armory. Our opponent will drain us for 2, but we're just going for commander damage anyway, so it doesn't matter how high their life total is. And how much work has Young Pyromancer done for us this game for just 2 mana? Alright, yeah, there's Skull Clamp. Actually, we could just go for the Jitte, couldn't we? And then the double strike will untap thanks to the Sword of Feast and Famine, so Jitte is okay here actually. We'll be able to buff our commander during the, or just before the second strike. By which time the Jitte will already have counters on it, so we can buff our commander with that. We'll equip Feather with the Jitte. We will Psychotic Fury onto Feather. And lots more triggers going on here. Kambal draining us for a lot of life here. We will just attack him with Feather and wait for first strike damage. Okay, there we go. I don't think it matters which order these go in. Sword of Feast and Famine will hit our opponent. They'll have to discard a card and we will untap all of our lands. And then a couple of charge counters on the Jitte. Okay, our opponent sees what was going to happen there. I think it did actually matter which order we put the triggers in. If we put the sword on first, then once we've hit our opponent with the Jitte, the sword trigger being on the stack gives us a chance to respond by buffing our Feather and therefore getting the lethal commander damage through. So luckily I managed to spot that in time, but our opponent scooped before we got a chance to hit them for lethal anyway, because they saw what was happening. So that was Feather the Redeemed. I hope you all enjoyed getting to see a little bit of how this deck is supposed to be run, and depending on views and thumbs up and encouraging comments, all the rest of it, I will definitely get some more Feather games going. Unless none of you are interested in seeing Feather, I've just assumed that this is going to be the most popular commander, but there are definitely more to come from War of the Spark, so be sure to let me know if you like Feather the Redeemed. I'm Tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.